Hi everybody, my name is Mark Galswick. I'm the Gas Products Manager here at Det-tronics. And we're here today with this video. We want to introduce you to our model LS2000 line-of-sight infrared gas detector. Again, the purpose of this video is going to be to briefly walk you through the installation and commissioning steps and give you an idea how you might install the product in the field. But before we dive into the setup, I'd like to briefly introduce you to the different types of gas technologies and where a line-of-sight detector might fit into that scheme. At a high level, we have point detectors, we have acoustic detectors, and we also have line-of-sight detectors. Now you're going to use your line-of-sight detector when you're trying to protect large areas, fence lines, perimeter monitoring, maybe you're shooting through a storage tank area. And because of that, we have two pieces of the system that have to be aligned towards each other. Here's everything that comes in the kit. An LS2000 system has three main components. We have our receiver device, we have our transmitter device, and then we have the alignment mounts that are used to mount them to the pole or wall that you choose. Also in that kit comes our weather shield brows. The transmitter has a brow, the receiver has a brow. This is used to protect the device from the environment, wind, rain, snow, that type of thing. And it also comes with the needed hardware to do all the mounting. Now in the alignment kit, you get all the tools you need to complete the alignment process. You can see I've got two different wrench sizes. I have my calibration magnet, which we'll use to initiate our zero calibration. I have my alignment tool. This is what we'll use to physically make sure the receiver and transmitter are pointed at each other. And lastly, I've got my system test film. This is what I'm going to use to check that the device has the proper alarm response after I've completed the installation process. It is important that you read the instruction manual. We're going to give you an overview of the main steps here today, but there's some detailed considerations that you should pick up from the instruction manual, such as where to locate the product, how firm the pole should be, and other things that are really important to the installation process. So let's get into it. There's 5 main steps in the installation process. The first one is install your mount to your pole or your flat surface. The second step is to secure your unit to the mount. The third step is to wire the product, so you're going to physically run the wires in there. The fourth step is to align the product. This is probably the most critical step for a line-of-sight system. And then the fifth step, we're going to calibrate and commission the device and make sure it's ready to protect your property and your plant. So let me demonstrate step 1. You can see I've got a pole here next to me now. Step 1 is installing the mount to the pole. If you look at the back of the mount, you can see that it's suited for either a vertical pole or a horizontal pole mount. Also, these holes are 5-inch squares, so you can use that to drill holes for a flat surface mount as well. Today I'm going to use a 4-inch vertical pole, by far the most common installation we see in the field, and we'll demonstrate how you can put the mount on that pole. It's really as simple as putting it at the height that you want and then attaching the U-bolts around the back. And that completes the installation of our alignment mount to our pole. We're going to complete the same process for the transmitter mount, and it is important that you keep the transmitter and receiver mounts at approximately the same height. Next, we're going to take our receiver unit and we're going to mount it to our alignment mount. There are 2 bolts provided for that process. Simply come down from the top and secure the unit to the mount. Okay, we've completed the installation of our receiver onto our alignment mount. I'd like to briefly point out your adjustment points here. The 2 big bolts on the bottom are what we use to adjust our vertical or our up and down aiming. And then the 2 horizontal bolts on top are used to adjust your horizontal or your side-to-side aiming. At this point, it's a good idea to give your receiver a rough alignment and make sure it's generally pointed downfield at your transmitter. That's going to make that final alignment step just a little bit easier. Now our next step is wiring. For this step, we're going to attach our conduit. We're going to fish our wire through it. And then we're going to attach those wires to the appropriate terminal in the back housing. As you can see, we've completed installation of our wires into their appropriate terminal block. There is a label on the back of the terminal block that can be used as a guide for where those wires should be installed. Next, we're going to go complete the same thing at the transmitter on the other end, and we're going to reinstall our back cover. Step 4 is the alignment process. At this point, if you've applied power to the unit, you might notice that it's in a fault. That would be very normal as we've not completed the alignment process yet. Your fault's going to be indicated by a yellow LED, And you can actually count the number of flashes in that fault to figure out exactly what fault you're in. In this case, we're going to have a 10-second hold of yellow LED, and then it's going to flash 7 flashes. That indicates that I'm in a beam block fault. And again, that's normal because the receiver isn't getting any light from the transmitter because they haven't been aligned to point at each other yet. So step 1 of the alignment process is to take our alignment tool and attach it to the face of the receiver. We're going to do that by using these long standoffs and screwing them in, and that will secure our alignment tool in place. You can adjust it so that it's pointed where you want to. You'll notice there's a couple shorter standoffs there as well. Those are for when you attach the alignment tool to the face of the transmitter, which has a wider diameter than the lens of the receiver. Now I'm going to look through the scope and I'm going to see if those crosshairs are pointed at the transmitter. And what we're going to want to do is move those crosshairs until they're covering up the face of the transmitter. That'll indicate the receiver and the transmitter are pointed directly at each other. So as I look through the scope, I can see that I'm below and to the right of the transmitter. So I'm going to use my adjustment knobs to bring that receiver to the left. I'm now going to use my vertical adjusters to bring the crosshairs up to the point where they're aligned vertically with the transmitter. Now I can see that my crosshairs are aligned directly over the lens of the transmitter, which means this is where we want it to be. Now that the receiver is pointed directly at the transmitter, and I can see that the alignment crosshairs are over the top of the transmitter face, it's time to tighten down my adjustment locking bolts. First I'm going to tighten down the vertical adjusters, then I'll tighten down the horizontal adjusters. Then we need to come in and cinch up these locking bolts on top, and then finally we'll come back and spin down the jam nuts and get them very tight. That's going to hold this whole mount very solid. As a final step, we'll take one more look through the alignment tool and make sure that the alignment hasn't shifted at all. Once that's complete, we'll go ahead and remove our alignment tool from the face of the receiver. Again, at this point, it would be normal to still have a fault indication on the receiver because we've not aligned the transmitter to the receiver yet. But before we leave, I'm going to take my weather shield brow and I'm going to install that over the face of the receiver. Now we'll go complete the same process at the transmitter, and when we come back we'll expect that our yellow LED has turned green and the device is operating properly. Okay, we've completed alignment of our transmitter, and now we're back here at the receiver. We do have a green LED on the receiver now. That's a good indication that we've properly aligned the devices, even though we haven't completed our 5th and final step, which is calibration and commissioning. We're going to move on to that step now. For the start of this step, it's very important that you bypass your system. Make sure you disable all alarm and fault outputs. And it's also a good idea to check and make sure that you've cleaned your lens and that there's no obvious contaminants on there. What we need to do is complete our zero calibration. Now there's no span calibration for the LS2000. We just need to teach the device what its normal zero looks like. And we have a couple of options for initiating that calibration. The most convenient one is simply with a magnet, and that's the one we're going to use here today. You could also initiate calibration with a Hart handheld or by wiring a switch into the terminal block. Now I'm going to place this magnet on the side of the receiver. First I'm going to get a flashing green LED for the first 2 seconds. If I were to remove the magnet during that time, it would reset any alarms that may have been latched. Once it starts flashing yellow, that shows that I've reached my calibration time frame, and then I can go ahead and remove the magnet, and the device will begin its zero calibration process. Now, depending on your alignment, this process could take anywhere from 20 to 60 seconds. You just have to keep watching, and once the LED turns back green, that means that we've completed our calibration process. And we can see that it's completed. We have a green LED. And so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to use our system test film to ring through an alarm in the system. Now these test films look just like gas to our LS2000. It's because they're constructed of a hydrocarbon material that reads to the LS2000 just like a gas cloud would. You can see we have 5 identical films in here. I know that this device is set up so that 2 of those test films will help me achieve a low alarm. So if I put those 2 films on there, I should be getting a flashing red LED. That's good. That means I've achieved my low alarm. Now if I want to actuate my high alarm, I'm going to take 2 more films and put them in there, so I've got 4 total films. Go ahead and hang those on the brow of the receiver, and I should see a solid red LED. Now that's indicating that I've reached my high alarm, and that this device is properly operating, and then it's going to detect gas when it needs to. And that's the final step. Now we can go ahead and unbypass our system, and the device will be properly protecting our property. Hopefully we've shown you that it's a relatively simple process with clear steps that doesn't require a high level of expertise to complete. For additional information, additional literature, or product videos, please check out our website, Det-tronics.com.